Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about the shortest tribal councils in Survivor history. We often hear from players that tribal councils in Survivor can last upwards of 2 hours, as Jeff interrogates the players and they make their case for who should stay and who should go. But what about the tribal councils that lasted upwards of 2 minutes? Yeah, not every tribal council is a long, drawn-out affair, and some reportedly barely scratched double-digit numbers for one reason or another. So let's talk about them. Now, firstly, I want to get one thing clear. I wasn't there, and until Jeff gives me access to all of the unedited tribal council footage in the Survivor Vault, no one really has a definitive list of tribal council lengths. There's no shot timer at the bottom of the screen counting the seconds. All we can really go on is what is said by players and Jeff on the screen and after the fact. So it's best to think of this as a highly curated list of super short tribals organized to the best of my ability. Finally, I won't be counting the impromptu tribal council / back rub session when Brandon Hance was voted out of Survivor Karamoan, because to me, this was purely a formality, and I don't really count it because, let's be real, Brandon was being ejected from the game here. Which tribal councils were the shortest ever and why? Let's find out. At number 5 is the second tribal council in Survivor, Nicaragua. Typically, the first time a tribe visits tribal council, it's one of the longest tribals of the season. A large amount of players are putting pen to parchment for the first time, and there's a lot of relationships and tribal dynamics for Jeff to get to the bottom of, which is why it's incredible that LaFleur's first tribal council was one of the shortest ever. What happened? Shannon imploded. The early days of LaFleur had two competing alliances, Shannon's alliance and Sash, Nayanka, and Brenda's alliance, and Chase was the swing vote. But the tribal tide began to turn against Shannon after he tried to convince Chase to take out Brenda. Shannon was pretty screwed come tribal, and both Benry and Kelly B jumped ship during tribal because Shannon kept digging his hole deeper, and the rest of the tribe kept handing him shovels. I don't know what Shannon could have done to save himself at this tribal council, but it definitely was not this.
You're pretty much digging your own grave.
Hey, I'm gonna get this out of the way right now. You get it?
I'm sure I've had a lot more beautiful girlfriends than you have, buddy.
You probably haven't, my brother, but good luck. Yeah, trust me, you haven't.
I'm 100%.
I know you haven't. Trust me.
I'd like you to try and see work your magic in New York.
New York's full of a bunch of gay people, yeah. New York is full of gay people.
The Jeff Varner strategy. Now that's an interesting approach. I think it's worth noting that in post-game press and at the reunion, Shannon repeatedly doubled and tripled down on his statements, making further derogatory comments while simultaneously claiming he's not a bigot. Anyway, according to post-game exit press, we saw most of this tribal council. Shannon calls out Chase for not wanting to vote Brenda, others push back on that. Shannon calls Sash gay. Everyone hates it and just wants to get to the vote, and Jeff obliges, probably just to get Shannon off of Survivor faster. At number 4 is Jenna's vote off in Survivor Ghost Island. This is the final 10 vote off, the first elimination in a double tribal episode, where the merged tribe was split into 2 random groups of 5, with both groups going to tribal. Now, I imagine these nights where 2 tribes or groups of players go to tribal council are already shorter than your average tribal council, because they have to fit 2 tribal councils into the space of 1. But this tribal council in particular seems to be going for the tribal council speedrun. This tribal's fivesome was the electric group of Angela, Seabass, Donathan, Chelsea, and Jenna, and I would not blame you if you do not recall a single one of these people. Outside of Donathan, these are some of the most under-edited players in Survivor history. The narrative of this season up to this point is that Malolo, which Donathan and Jenna are members of, are getting picked off one by Navidi, which the other three are members of. Theoretically, if Donathan and Jenna stick together and play Donathan's idol correctly, they can get through this vote and give Malolo some ground in the game. They've got a 50-50 shot with the idol, and they're both fairly convinced Jenna's getting the votes. Donathan actually offers to play his idol on Jenna, but her plan is not to actually vote Seabass with Donathan, but instead to actually backstab him and vote for him, so that he goes home on the revote. Proof that Malolo truly deserved everything they got. At Tribal, everyone just wants to speedrun this thing, but for different reasons. Jenna acts all mopey like she's going home, which I don't think she thought she actually was, and everyone else just wants to get through it quickly so Jenna doesn't catch on that she's the actual plan. Jeff does his best to liven up a sleepy and uneventful tribal council, but it's not like this is the liveliest bunch anyway.
Wow, this may be the fewest questions I've ever asked at a tribal council. All right, it is time to vote.
Yeah, with this group, can't say I blame him. At number 3 is the Alicia vote-off in Survivor Co-Wrong. Even in the episode itself, this one is a quickie for how much of a foregone conclusion it was. Because this was the episode where Beast Mode Cowboy got Beast Mode Heatstroke and almost Beast Mode died, we go straight from the immunity challenge to Tribal Council, and the cast take their seats at Tribal at the 38.5-minute mark in a 43-minute episode. Genuinely one of the most yada-yada Tribal Councils of all time, on Island and on screen. Here's why. Alicia did not fit in on the Brawn Tribe. In a land of NBA players, pro bodybuilders, and one of the best bounty hunters in the lower Southeast Michigan area 3 to 6 months out of the year during every other waxing gibbous moon, Alicia stood out like a sore thumb. Her brawny claim to fame, her dad was a boxing promoter, not even a fucking boxer. Scott and Jason did not like Alicia. She didn't fit in and they talked down to her and called her Blondie. And the only reason she didn't go first was because they overplayed their hand and took out Darnell for some reason. And the only reason she didn't go second is because Jenny stepped on the bullet for her. Get down, Mr. President! When Braun lose immunity again in episode 4, there is now no question it's Alicia. Scott has the idol, the other three are tightly aligned. Alicia has no shot at staying. There is no question. She has less of a shot of staying than Mike Skupin and Jeff Varner have of returning as tribe mentors for Island of the Idols 2. What do you think his test would be? Definitely not how to make the jury. Even Probst is like, you're cooked, let's vote.
Alicia, I think you're going to be voted out tonight. I don't think there's any chance of voting anybody else out. I don't know if I've ever seen a tribal that was this clear cut.
Right.
This is another tribal council where we basically saw the whole thing. There wasn't much to talk about because there was no question it was anyone but Alicia. And honestly, I'd also rather head to Ponderosa to hang out with Darnell and Jenny than stay in the game with Scott and Jason any longer. At number 2 is the final 3 tribal council in Survivor, Cagayan. At the final 3 round of Cagayan, Wu won immunity, meaning he could choose whether he would sit next to Tony or Cass at Final Tribal. It's a big decision, $1 million decision. Better think on this. Do you take the person you will completely shut out in a vote, and by this time tomorrow you'll be a millionaire? Or do you take the person who will destroy and embarrass you at Final Tribal? Tough call. Tony spent all afternoon misting Wu into believing that the honorable thing to do would be to take him, and the jury will reward his honorable decision with their votes. I still can't believe this worked, by the way. As Tribal opens, Tony and Cass make brief pitches to Wu, likely expecting that they'll be able to make their case further later in Tribal Council. But when Jeff asks Wu to weigh the pros and cons of taking Tony and Cass, in his mind, Wu just asks to vote instead, and because Wu is the sole decider of this vote, Jeff allows it. and Wu votes out Cass and takes Tony to the end. Part of me wonders if Wu subconsciously knew he was about to blow his game Colby style and just didn't want to think about it anymore. I don't know, that's just my speculation. Either way, this would definitely be the shortest Final 3 Tribal Council ever. If not for... The shortest Tribal Council in Survivor history is the Final 3 vote-off in Survivor Palau. I don't know definitively how long the other Tribal Councils on this list were, but I do know that Palau's final vote is the shortest Tribal Council ever. The final immunity challenge in Survivor Palau went unexpectedly long, and what was going to be a simple endurance challenge between Tom, Ian, and Katie, which was expected to last a few hours at most, turned into a double-digit hours-long showdown as Tom and Ian duked it out in what ended up being one of the longest challenges of all time. Katie drops out at a very respectable 5 hours, but still looks like a chump in comparison to Tom and Ian, who go a whopping 12 hours, both understanding that whoever wins this challenge wins the game. Eventually, Ian decides to voluntarily step down and asks Tom specifically not to bring him to Final Tribal because he felt at this point that he'd betrayed both Tom and Katie, people who he considered friends, and he valued his dignity over victory. Fair enough. With it now dark out, the show running hours behind schedule, and most of what would have been litigated at Final Tribal having happened during the last 12 hours of the challenge, Jeff just hosts an impromptu tribal council right here, where Tom votes out Ian per his wishes. I think we see all of this tribal council, which simply amounts to Jeff asking Tom who he's voting out, Tom saying Ian, and that's it. Then they all peace out, leaving Ian floating alone in the dark. Well, see you later. Got nothing else for ya. If you liked this video, which was probably longer than some of these tribal councils, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.